Hey everybody, it's Dr. Jay Greenstein here coming to you live from the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. And I am fortunate enough today to be with my good friend and Sport and Spine Rehab's Director of Service Excellence, Kat Lovejoy. Kat, say hello to everybody.
Hey guys, what's up?
What's up? So while Kat, you and I, we love to have fun working together. It's always a pleasure working with you at our company. We're going to talk today about a pretty serious topic. And so Kat, June 5th, tell us about that day and why that date will remain in both of our minds for the rest of our lives.
A date that will remain in infamy, right?
Yeah, right, so, exactly.
June 5th of last year was the day that we discovered we had been hacked by a ransomware virus.
And how did we find out, like, what happened that day?
That morning, a couple of employees, including myself, were attempting to access one of our older servers, and we weren't able to open anything. So we alerted our IT company thinking, oh, it's just, the servers crashed again. It's no big deal. And then through his research and contacting our old software company, we discovered all of our files had been locked with a code. And there was a text file that gave us a weird email address in like the Ukraine that we had to email to try to get the password to unlock our files.
And they literally held our data for ransom. It was, do you remember what they wanted us to pay in? I mean, I remember, but do you remember?
Yeah, so we didn't really want to negotiate with them because that wasn't in our ideals. And luckily for us, this was an old system. So it wasn't really holding hostage any current patient availability or access to their record. So we were able to fully function without it. Mm-hmm. But we did email just to find out through a fake email account that we made. And they did ask us for 2 Bitcoin at first, which I believe at the time was something like $6,000, I believe.
Uh-huh.
It's since gone up, but and then we replied and said we couldn't afford that. So they said one Bitcoin.
You were negotiating with data terrorists, basically.
Terrorists, yeah. I wasn't happy about that, but we wanted to find out what it would be. And the reason you don't want to really do that is even if you are going to pay them and they give you a code, you have no guarantee the code's actually going to do anything. And you actually don't have any guarantee that they're going to give you the files back in any way. So you could just pay $6,000 to some horrible human being for nothing, and your stuff is still locked.
So. Right, and they're gone, and they're happy, and we're still screwed.
Yeah.
So, Kat, tell the audience all the things that we needed to do in order to make it right all the way across the board.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of items that you have to do that are required by law. And then there are some items that you really want to make sure you do to take care of your patients and your staff and make sure everything is safe and secure. So, the very first thing you want to do, and it's what we did immediately, is lock that site down. So whoever had access can no longer get in. So we completely took the server offline. Our IT company immediately made a copy of how it looked right then. So no other changes could happen to it because you don't know what the virus is doing. It could be slowly changing files even from there forward. Sure. So that's called, stopping the attack, essentially, is what you want to do first, and completely get everybody out of it. So we eliminated everyone's access except for mine and the IT person. So after we did that, we did an investigation, and it's your job to not only investigate how it happened, but to figure out how to restore your content. So you have to have access to your patient's medical records. You have to be the one in control of them. So that was the next step that we needed to do. We wanted to contact people right away, but you don't want to release that without knowing the full magnitude of the situation. You need to see, were the files accessed? Were they taken? Were they copied? And those kinds of things you can look at from, beyond my scope of reach in terms of IT knowledge, but they can figure that out. So once you did the investigation, you then want to get everything back online, mitigate the problem, so making sure it doesn't happen again. And the way we did that is we created VPN servers. So that was the only way to access it, was a virtual private network, and limited our access to only our IP addresses. to that server, which we should have had it that way from the beginning.
Right.
We didn't. After that, you want to report the breach to all required entities, depending on the size of it. You might need to report just to HHS, Health and Human Services, or OCR, which you can do from hhs.gov. You also have to, in some instances, report to the attorney generals of whatever states are affected. So we had to report both in Maryland and Virginia because that's where our patients are located.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to report it to the FBI. That was an interesting phone call that I never thought in my life I would ever have to call the FBI, but I did. They were very nice. They will not tell you their names, just so you know. When you call the agent, they just give you a number. They won't tell you what their name is. I found that fascinating, being a true crime buff. I had to report it in a couple other places that are escaping me right now. Attorney generals, HHS. Oh, you might have to report to the Federal Trade Commission. It depends how much financial information was stolen. In our case, it wasn't any financial information that was accessed, so we didn't have to report to the FTC.
So I think it's really important for the audience to know, like, where did you realize that you had to report to all these agencies? Where did you find that information?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things that we realized in this company was we didn't have any one person who knew all of this and was dedicated as a HIPAA privacy or security, officer of our company. So I sort of absorbed that and had to go and learn all this.
Because you had nothing else to do, right, Kat? I mean, you really
right,
sitting around doing nothing.
Super bored all the time. So I found most of it, I believe, on the HHS site. So I think I just Googled, what do I do if I work at a medical provider's office and I've had a breach or I've been hacked by ransomware? And then I was able to we reached out and contacted somebody at OCR HHS, and she gave us some additional information on what we wanted to kind of, get together before we had to report finally. So it was just from looking it up on HHS. Really.
We also had to let our patients know. We had to send out email blasts. We had to put it on the homepage of our website that we had been hacked. That's really good for branding and new patients and all that good stuff, right?
Yeah, so that is definitely all a requirement. Again, it depends on the size of your breach, believe it or not. If you have fewer than 500 individuals that have been affected, you don't have to tell them, which I think is just crazy. I would tell them anyway. In this case, it was larger than that, so we're required to notify them. You can do it by any contact method that you have. We preferred email was easiest. If you're not able to get them by email, however, you are required to attempt to contact them in another way. So we had a phone system that contacted people automatically and told them if they wanted to call in. We had to establish a hotline. So we had to get a 1-800 number that we had to purchase that people could call in. It has to be a toll-free number. You cannot use your regular phone lines. We had to establish an email that they could reach. And we also had to post on our website. We had to do a media alert where we, what do you call that? Where you
like a press release?
A press release. Thank you. Yep. We had to do that to all the local media outlets. So if they would like to publish something, they can and make it public knowledge.
Well, that would have been a fun interview, like ABC walking into my office. Hey, Dr. J, here you got hacked.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been a fun interview. This sad part of it is, and when you go on HHS, you can actually see from their reporting site all the reports of these ransomware viruses and hacks that are happening everywhere. I mean, government entities. It obviously happened to Equifax. It's happening everywhere.
It happened to Walmart, right? Walmart got hacked. Everybody.
Target, credit card companies. I mean, it's everywhere. So what you realize from it is no one is safe anymore. It can have, there was a whole virus that hit personal computers where it ransomwared people's personal computers. Like, it's crazy. We ended up having to hire a data recovery company to come in. We did not pay the stupid ransomer because they don't deserve it. And we hired a data recovery company to come in, go through our files, unlock everything for us. We did pay them to do that.
Substantially, I might add.
More than we would have
inexpensive.
More than we would have paid the ransomer, but we wanted to make sure the files came back to us and that our patient's information was as safe as it could be. And that's pretty much the front end of everything we did. And then I had to compile all of the information of everything we did, do a complete risk assessment, which a lot of places don't realize that is an actual HIPAA requirement, is that it's not a recommendation anymore. It is a requirement that you do regular risk assessments. The first one is the hardest because you have to create baseline data. And then your future risk assessments are a little easier because you're just kind of assessing how well you're doing and whether the items you've put in place are working to protect you. But that was very time consuming. We had to do it for every location, and you have to evaluate not only physical space, your technological equipment, your access, your availability, each employee. I mean, it's
policies and procedures,
your training. It's very, very extensive. I'm glad we did it. It gave me a lot of insight, and now we're able to create better training, create better content, and understand where our risks are and come up with solutions to prevent those from becoming windows into our system.
Kat, I love what you said about nobody being safe. Like today we can smile about it, but when we were going through it, it was really stressful. It was incredibly expensive, both in terms of hard dollars, but also in terms of time. When you submitted to HHS that final report that had the risk assessment and all these other documents that needed to be filled out, I don't know how that was a huge document. It probably took you several hundred hours to get all of that done. Would you agree?
Yes. It was about 57 pages, I believe, of documents. And yeah, hundreds of hours. I think that's pretty accurate. It took me several months to compile it all.
And you said something that was really important, that no one out there is safe. So I'm going to look right into the camera. No one out there is safe. We are telling you this story so you understand what happens out there when you get hacked. So hopefully by learning from this video, this will not happen to you. That's why we're telling you this story. So in conclusion, Kat, what would you recommend to the audience that's watching so it doesn't happen to them?
Okay. Number one, you need to do a risk assessment. If you don't know how to do them, you can go on HHS. It has a tool called the SRA tool that you can download. It walks you through every question that you're going to need to know the answer to. Be prepared. It takes lots of hours. It is a solid, probably 40 hours for one office. So if you have multiple locations, just be prepared, budget your time, and make sure you're ready and you've compiled everything that you can, including and especially your equipment. And that goes into my second recommendation. Make sure that you have updated computers. So that doesn't mean it has to be the best computer on the market. It means that you have computers that function, they have updated software, they have virus software on them, and they are monitored by either your HIPAA privacy and security officer, and it should be actually both, your IT specialist. If that's the same person, that's okay. By the way, you need to have a HIPAA privacy and security officer if you don't, or two of them. Third thing would be education and training for your staff. If they don't know what to look out for and what's expected of them, they're going to miss things. And probably most likely the way that this virus infiltrated our system was through somebody's email or a link they clicked on or something like that while they were inside of our server. So establish clear guidelines for what they can and cannot click on, what they should be looking out for in their email, what looks shady, what doesn't look shady, and what should they do if it looks shady. And also disciplinary measures. So what happens if something they do causes a breach?
Mm-hmm.
We don't want people to think, well, I can just click on anything because no one will know. If we discover you are the root cause, this is what is going to happen to you. And then I would obviously say just read up on HHS. Just make sure you understand what the regulations are. What are the recommendations versus requirements that HIPAA has to protect people from these things. So
that's great, Kat.
And vigilance. Stay vigilant.
Yes, stay vigilant. That's really helpful because a lot of people think, oh, HIPAA, we just got to, make sure that our files aren't showing and we're taking the sign-in sheets, pulling off the tab of the sign-in sheet and we're protecting patient privacy. But there's so much more to this. And I greatly appreciate, all that you've shared today. And most importantly, I greatly appreciate everything that you did to make it right for our practice and our patients. You are a remarkable young lady, and I just really respect you and appreciate you. So the world should know that. At any rate, any final thoughts?
I just want to make sure this doesn't happen to anybody else because it is not fun for anyone to deal with. The patients especially don't deserve to have that type of stress put on them. Most of them were lovely. I mean, once we were able to explain to them what happened and how we could help them, but we were lucky. I mean, the truth is we were lucky. The things that were taken were not accessed. They were not copied. So you might not be so lucky. So don't take it for granted that you have the opportunity to prevent it and actually do something.
And I just want to end with one final thought for the audience. If you do get hacked, just do the right thing. As painful as it may be to notify your patients and put it on your website and go through the due diligence of what HHS and other regulatory agencies require. If you don't do that and they find out, you'll be in much deeper poo-poo. So that's my strong recommendation. Kat,
Absolutely.
Thanks again for being here today, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.